Hello. After brief intermission, my microphone is back to working. So this month, the person who is picking the books on my TBR is Cindy from Read with Cindy. Now, this is not the first time that Cindy and I have buddy read, that we have given recs to each other. We've given each other several recs over the years, and our taste is very varying. It varies a lot. We either agree or we really disagree. These are the picks that Cindy picked out for me. I've already completed one of them, How to Keep House While Drowning, and the other two I have not even started, and it is the 12th of March. I am very behind. I got my surgery since the last time you guys saw me. It was actually Cindy who picked me up from the hospital, and it was funny because the me after surgery was a Levi without social anxiety. I did not give a fuck. I did not give a shit about what was going on. That was like the closest I'll ever get to being a normal human being. And then I started being in pain again, and so like the anesthesia wore off and my social anxiety came back. I don't have any family in the state, so I don't know what I would have done if she hadn't come to pick me up. So everybody, round of applause for Cindy. So I'm really excited to get to the other picks because This Is How You Lose the Time War is one of her favorite books, and she's expressed this to me many times, and how much she loves the writing and the prose specifically. I'm worried for if it's going to make me cry and if it's too smart for me because I am deeply stupid. And then the next book is Emily Wilde, which I've had several friends recommend to me and tell me to read, and I've had several friends love and tell me to read. So I'm excited to get to those two. I've already read How to Keep House While Drowning, and I will talk about that later in a more formal clip. I get decision paralysis when it comes to books because I'm like, what if it's bad? What if it's really good? What if I am not in the mood for it? So having other people make these lists for me is so like soothing to my decision anxiety because I don't have to do it. So today I have my night class. I just got out of my morning class, which was moved online, and my lab internship, which is always online. So I'm just home at the current moment, but I do have to go on to campus later tonight. Also, my cat glasses broke. That was a real low point for me. I was already having a really shitty week, and I went to work and my cat glasses broke. However, next time you see me, it will be to explain my thoughts on How to Keep House While Drowning, which I'm not gonna lie, did kind of emotionally tear me apart. So I'm glad that I'm leaving Emily Wilde for last so I can be uplifted. I'll see you guys later. Do you believe that I just spent 30 minutes explaining to you my thoughts on How to Keep House While Drowning, and the whole entire clip was blocked by something, and so now I have to re-film it? I have a midterm today. I'm not in the mood for this. Okay, so take two, hopefully the last take two and not the electric boogaloo. I finished How to Keep House While Drowning, and I liked it. I'm not going to give it a star rating because I don't think a self-help book like warrants a star rating, but I mean, did it help me? I think so. I think I'm going to take some lessons that I learned from this book. And Cindy told me she recommended this to me because she knew it would gag and goop me. And you know what? It kind of did. I'm not gonna lie. The big message of the book is your space exists to serve you. You do not exist to serve your space. So if your dishes are always dirty, but you have the ones that you need, okay. If the dishwasher has to be run with half clean dishes and half dirty dishes because you don't have the energy to unpack the dishwasher, okay. If you need to wash a pair of socks and that's it, and those need to be washed, so you run the whole laundry, okay. And it touched on two things that really gagged and gooped me. So the first thing that it touched on that really stuck out to me was that of climate anxiety and cleaning. I have quite a bit of climate anxiety. I go out of my way and pay more money for climate-friendly products. For me, my climate anxiety, it stops me from organizing my space because I get anxious over single-use things. And so I just need to be like more mindful of how my climate anxiety interacts with how I keep my space and how I keep my space existing to serve me. It made me put into perspective how I treat myself, treating my space, and how my climate anxieties are impacting me from being truly comfortable in my space, and what steps do I need to do to become truly comfortable or to organize in a way that makes me truly comfortable. And then the second one was about childhood trauma or trauma in general. Basically, backstory, Levi lore is growing up, my parents were pretty strict on chores, and every kid, because there are a bajillion of us, every child had their own chore. And as we grew up, my chore just ended up being recycling and garbage. Now, I grew up in a 2-flat, a very old 2-flat. And every summer, the 2-flat would be inundated with spiders. I genuinely have arachnophobia to the point where if I want to Google a fact about spiders, I have to ask my friend to Google it for me because I can't deal with like the photos coming up. Any visual representation of spiders. Even when I get a spider like in my house, I vacuum it up. And I'm really scared the whole time. And I will leave the vacuum on for 5 minutes just to make sure that motherfucker is dead. But anyway, it got really inundated with spiders, really infested, and the back stairs were not covered and closed. They were outside. And so they had it, it was like 3 walls, but no roof, essentially. And so it would get infested. And I'm talking about those spider webs would go to the point where you would have to like duck under them to get out of their way, and the spider would be in the web. And so I would be so paralyzed, scared, that the second I ducked under them, the spider would drop on me. And I didn't have the capabilities to handle that. And so I wouldn't do the garbage and I wouldn't do the recycling, or it would take me several weeks because I would have to go all the way to the front of the house and then I'll go all the way to the back of the house and then throw it out in the alley. And that was just exhausting. And instead of my parents being like, why don't we switch your task with your sister who is not scared of spiders? They would just yell at me and they would get very frustrated with me and not understand that my fear was more than a fear. It was a genuine phobia. I mean, and continues to be a genuine phobia that I like have to work through. It created this anxiety around doing the garbage and recycling. And even though I now don't live with my parents, I let the recycling build up and up and up because my garbage chute is in the hallway. So like I don't need to go anywhere. I just take the garbage and I throw it down the chute. But the recycling, it's still has an act of going somewhere, going to a second location to throw out the recycling. And so it brings up, I think, these feelings of latent anxiety because I was yelled at so much. And so the more that it builds up and up and up, the more guilt that I feel due to these like childhood experiences. And so the author of the book, I've already forgotten her name, I'm so sorry, talks about how if you had a adverse experience around a cleaning task or a homekeeping task in the past, it may affect the way that you do it in the present. So I think she used domestic abuse as an example, but she was basically saying if the abusive spouse would get abusive over the fact that maybe you didn't do the dishes, it may be hard for you now to do the dishes, even if you know that spouse is no longer there. Those latent feelings of anxiety and fear may still be active, and in a way to protect yourself, you're no longer doing it. And I remember exactly where I was when I was listening to this chapter. I was on the bus going right through fucking Chinatown, gagged and goop in my seat, okay? She really fucking got me because I had never really connected that. I just knew that I really hated doing the recycling. And it was because I used to get yelled at constantly for not doing the recycling. And so the more that the recycling built and built and built, the more anxiety I felt. And so the more I avoided it. Now, this is not something that's going to be fixed overnight. This is something that I need to actively work on, and my feelings and how I deal with recycling. And so right now, what I'm telling myself to do, because I'm trying to be gentle with myself and not beat myself up with a metal baseball bat like I do 80 other times a week, is just take one piece. If I can even take one box down to recycling or one piece down to recycling, like I can do it. I can do it. It's fine. You know, the more that you do it, the more that you see like the positive effects, you know, hopefully the more comfortable you will get doing these tasks and it'll become easier over time. I appreciated the author for being so neutral about these issues. And the whole book, she's not telling you how to do something. She's not telling you to do something or not to do something. She's not telling you good people keep clean houses, bad people keep dirty houses, because we associate messiness with laziness. And that's something she says early on in the book. I don't believe anybody is lazy. And laziness is a term that is rooted in ableism. So I really recommend this book for people who are struggling with keeping organized when you have such a disorganized life. You know, my life is constantly changing because I have a school schedule that constantly changes, and I have to recognize that work and school will almost always come before cleaning my house because those are my priorities. And so how can I keep my house in a way that is beneficial to that schedule while also keeping care tasks easier for me? And so I have to come to the conclusion that my house is never going to be pristine. And that's fine. I don't know if I'll actively seek out other books like this in the future, but I do know that when it comes to my space, keeping it the way that I want and not feeling anxiety over how I keep my house, it is definitely a journey. And I'm glad that I read this book to help it be like a stepping stone in my journey, and how I keep my own house and how I'm happy in my own house. So thank you to Cindy for recommending this book. It did exactly what you wanted. The next book that I'm going to be reading is This Is How You Lose the Time War. If there's one thing that Cindy has always praised about this book, it is the prose. And Victoria also recently just read it, and I loved her thoughts on it as well. And she also really praised the prose. And so we all know that the most important person, Biglis Dickless, also really praised the prose. So I'm a little nervous because I'm not a sci-fi reader, and this is all about like time. The plot is supposed to be very complicated, so like I'm nervous that I'm too stupid for that. I'll float by on the pretty prose. So when something gags and goops me and This Is How You Lose the Time War, I will come back and update you people about it.
It's RSN.
Hi, it's been like a week since I've talked to you people. I am currently reading This Is How You Lose the Time War. Let me pull it out. This is genuinely like one of the best books I have ever read. Like, full stop, I don't annotate. It's not part of my reading experience. I'm putting the microphone over here, sorry. Look at how much I have annotated this book. Like, one, I have a highlight key. Like, hello? This is the first time that I have ever written in a book or highlighted a book, and this is all on the same page. This book is doing things to me. It's crazy. It is so good. So if you don't know what This Is How to Lose the Time War is about, it is about these two opposing soldiers. We have Red, who works for the agency, and then Blue, who works for the garden, and they are on opposing sides of the same war. Now, we don't know what the war is about. We don't know what the end goal is, or even what each side stands for, and I think that's very purposeful. But we do know that these two women are on opposing sides, and they're not supposed to like each other. They're both like non-human, and Red is from this agency where they're almost like robotic. Like I picture her as kind of like an automaton. Blue is part of the garden, which is like this society of beings that are all interconnected via nature. They are the best in their field, and it starts with Red noticing Blue, and so they start writing letters back and forth, and through these letters, as the war is going on, start falling in love. I am 100 pages in. It's 200 pages. The book is short, yes, but it's one of those books that you want to read slowly and like chew on because the prose is so beautiful. And I found myself doing that, like rereading the same page over and over, because especially in Blue's chapters, word choice is incredibly important. The authors pour their all into the word choice. There's so much wordplay that I really appreciate, and this book is just like it's just beautiful. Sorry for the weird angle, by the way. I can't even tell if you're crooked. You probably are crooked. I'm sitting on my floor because I just want to. I don't know which author writes which character, but I find myself liking Blue's point of view, like Blue's writing style, just a bit more. I just got to the part where Blue figures out that she's like in love with Red, and I screamed. When I tell you, I was in public, and I was like drinking coffee, and I was like trying to contain myself because I love it so much. It's just so beautiful. And so I can definitely see why this is a book that Cindy would enjoy and really appreciate, because Cindy has a really big appreciation for writing style and for prose style. And that's something that's been consistent when we read books together. And it's very clear to me, at least, that she has a deep understanding and a deep appreciation for prose styles and how difficult it is to develop your voice as a writer. And that is something that is always in her critiques of the books that we're reading together. They need to teach this. They need to teach this in schools. Biglis Dickless was so correct. Like, you do need to drop everything right now and read this. And this would be such a beautiful book to pick apart in a creative writing classroom. It reminds me in some ways of Howl's Moving Castle, of how war is a metaphor. And in this, for me, it's reading a little like all is fair in love and war is a antonym to love. War in that movie is also an antonym. I don't think antonym is the right word I'm looking for, but I can't remember the word right now. But it's the opposite of love, and how the price of war is your body, is yourself, and how he chooses love over war, and how those are opposing things. You cannot have both. And so this kind of reminds me of that. And just the way that this is set up, like, I can definitely see if you liked the movie Howl's Moving Castle, because the book has very different vibes. But if you like the movie Howl's Moving Castle, I think that you would like this book, because the way that they are developing love, the way that they are developing war, it really reminds me a lot of the movie. Not so much the book. The book is very different. So I'm really enjoying this book. It's right up my alley. So I think I can finish This Is How You Lose the Time War today. No, bitch, I've got class this week. I'm so excited to have spring break next week. I've been so tired. So just to have like a week, because I still work, but I only work over the weekends. So to have a week where I am not obligated to do anything for school, but inevitably will be working on final projects anyway, just seems so relieving. I'm on the brink. Like, I have a presentation I have to do today. I have class. I have like several things I have to do today. And it's just like, I've been putting it off because I don't want to do it, but it's fine. I shall persevere for my academic career, because I have 8 weeks left and then I graduate, partially. I still have another year after that, but like, I graduate with my bachelor's, which is really crazy to think about, because school has been an uphill struggle for me. You know, it wasn't an option when I left high school. I didn't have the grades for it, and more importantly, I didn't have the money for it. So I felt very behind, because all of my friends went to college and I had to rectify the fact that I couldn't. So I took time off, and when I came back, I paid my own way. I went to 2 years of community college, which was covered by grants, and because I graduated with really shit grades, because I had unmitigated anxiety and depression, and was left a lot to fend for myself in high school. Like, my parents were not really active in my academic career. So I graduated with really shit grades, and that definitely impacted what schools I got into. I spent 2 years at community college, I got a 3.8. Some colleges not giving scholarships to incoming transfer students blacklisted me from a lot of colleges I might have applied to, and made it not an option, because there's no way I could afford to go to college without a scholarship. And then I transferred into a private institution that gave me, I was very lucky with the amount of money that they gave me, but I am still on the line for all the other money. Really, college has been an uphill battle for me, and to think that I'm graduating in 10 weeks, less than that, 8 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it is really crazy to think about. It's really quite insane, because I've worked full-time throughout my whole time at college. When I first transferred over in my junior year, I was working full-time, and then I got another job, and it shut me down to about 35 hours a week, which isn't full-time, but it's kind of close. And now I work about 30 hours a week, so definitely not full-time, but for the majority of my time in college, I was working a full-time job and going to school full-time, because I had to. There was no other choice. People would ask me like, oh my God, how are you doing it? Like, bitch, I don't have another choice. That's how I'm doing it. And I sacrificed a lot to do that. And I don't think I ever rectified that with myself. I sacrificed a social life. I sacrificed a romantic life. I sacrificed my hobbies. I haven't had hobbies in several years. And so I've sacrificed a lot to get myself where I am. But I'm graduating with a 3.9 GPA. I'm graduating with amazing letters of recommendation for a PhD program. It's definitely something I'm proud of. I think I'm just going to take myself out to dinner and have a really nice dinner at the end of the semester as like a congratulations, because I'm not walking the stage. It's just so much money, and like, I don't want to pay for it. So I think I'm just going to take myself out to a nice dinner. I might invite somebody in my family to come up and get them up here, or like go out with a friend. You know what? I could be proud of myself for like 1 second, and that 1 second is over, and I'm back to self-hatred. And speaking of self-hatred, I do have several things I have to do today, so I must speak to you guys later. But hopefully when I do speak to you, it will be when I'm done with This Is How You Lose the Time War, and I'll be able to gush about it more. Hello. It is currently Monday morning from like the last time I spoke to you, which I think was Wednesday morning. But I wanted to talk about This Is How You Lose the Time War, because look at how much I have tabbed. I am obsessed with this book. I literally like can't even read it for long periods of time, because the writing craft is so good. It feels like this is the type of book where you're supposed to read a chapter every day or something like that. And it's just so beautiful. It's genuinely like one of the most beautiful books I've ever read. I'm at the point where Blue and Red have like recognized their love for each other, and it's just so, and I'm just so in awe at how beautiful this book is. However, it is now the last week of March, and I have this book to finish and the entirety of Emily Wilde to read. Hopefully I can finish this today and then focus the rest of the week on Emily Wilde, because that book is not short. Let me go grab my copy. It's about 320 pages, but this was on Cindy's Best Books of the Year list last year, and I feel like she did not read many bangers last year. So this was one that I know she really enjoyed, and like just really loved the relationship. So I don't read a lot. This would be, I think, considered cozy fantasy or like teetering on romantasy, question mark. But I don't read a lot of that in general. I don't read a lot of fantasy in general. So I'm excited to see, but I have so many friends who have loved this book and are going to be excited that I'm reading it. So I am excited to like get into this one, but it means I have to finish this one first. So I'm on my way. Oh my God. Thinking about next month, dear God, this woman is going to make me work. I can't wait until I introduce next month to you, but if the way I'm struggling to get like 3 short books, and this, okay, I'll see you guys when I finish Time More. Okay, so I finished this book, and oh my God, this book was amazing. Definitely 5 stars, and something that I can see myself rereading in the future just to go over the prose. And I was reading the acknowledgements, and the author said that they wrote together literally side by side, how they spent a lot of time in person together writing this book, which I think helps with the flow so much, because they can communicate with each other and physically like be next to each other and work out the kinks and have input on each other's chapters. I'd be interested to know who wrote who. I would seek out more books from both of these authors, definitely, but I think they are such a powerhouse together. This is definitely going to be a 5-star for me. I would recommend this for people who liked the movie and the book Howl's Moving Castle, but I think this follows closely to the movie in the way that the whole point of this book, the whole, at least for me, is how love is the antithesis to war. And that is something that is held up also in Howl's Moving Castle. So I couldn't stop myself from making comparisons as I was reading, comparisons between Howl choosing humanity over war, and how war, the cost of war, is humanity. And it's kind of the same thing here, and it's just so beautiful. Like, I love when books explore this theme that like love and war cannot coexist, even though they're often like the mirror image of each other, such as the saying like all is fair in love and war. And so I just loved how this book explored that. I love the relationship. I love how it unfolds. The last like third of the book is so action-packed, and there's so much going on, and like I cried a little bit, I'm not gonna lie. I would definitely reread this in the future, and thank you, Cindy, for making me read it, because it did gag me. I was gagged and gooped, and it was really, really good. And I definitely recommend this. I 100% recommend this to people who have not read it. And I just experienced the beauty. However, I will say this book is short, but it is incredibly dense. It took me a really long time to read it. It's a little confusing. Like, the wordplay can be so, like, there's just one part where Red is learning how to write letters from like a book, essentially, and she sends it in a, she sends a seal on her letter, but the way that Blue gets to the letter, she breaks open a seal, like the animal. And so just like literally the wordplay like that is so beautiful, and I loved it so much. Yeah, definitely recommend. This book is a masterclass on writing and should be taught in universities everywhere. Hopefully when you see me next, I will have made some headway into Emily Wilde, because I have like until the end of the week to read it, and it's not available on audio. It's been a second since I've talked to you guys, but I am about 100 pages into Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. It's currently the 28th of March, so I am struggle busting. My hope by the end of today is to get to page 150 and then just read 50 pages every day after work, because today is the last day of my spring break. Today is like the last day of me not having to do anything, and I have definitely taken advantage of that and like not done anything that I was supposed to do over break because I didn't want to. So far, this is my least favorite of Cindy's options. Sorry, I know everybody and their mother is liking this book. I'm not a fan so far of the writing style. But I do like that it's academic. Like, Emily Wilde is an academic to her core, and I love the way that she describes things, and I also love the way that she talks about research. I just don't read a lot of historical, so the historical writing is getting me a bit. And also, she hasn't showered in like 2 weeks, and I am so happy for modern times. I'm so happy I don't live in 1909 and I have access to plumbing. It is currently April 1st. Happy Fool's Day to everybody who celebrates. I have not finished Encyclopedia of Fairies. I thought that I would be able to read throughout the weekend. I don't know what possessed me. I'm never able to read throughout the weekend. I'm always too tired. So I was not able to read throughout the weekend. So currently I am almost exactly halfway through Emily Wilde, and I'm really enjoying it. The more that I get into it, the more that I understand the comparison to Howl's Moving Castle. Now that I'm like halfway in, I actually don't know like the central conflict. I'm sure we're approaching it now, but I also thought that like Wendell being Fae, it's not really a spoiler because she flat out, she's like, no, he is Fae. Within the first like 20 pages, she's like, oh, actually he's Fae. I thought that was going to be like the main conflict of the book. Like, she's trying to figure it out. He doesn't want to reveal it. No, it's revealed within the first like 20 pages. She confirms it basically. And then we start to learn more about like what type of Fae and where Wendell is really from, and see more of his like magic abilities. But it's funny that the way it came about and like the way that it was confirmed so quickly, and Emily was never doubting it. She was never actually like unsure really. So that was funny. I thought that was going to be like a more important part of the book, but it's not. It's just like a fact of life, which I thought that was funny. So now we're following these two girls who have been kidnapped by the Fae, and they're trying to find them. When I read like an academia book, usually I relate to the characters in academia. Like, I find our work ethics very similar, but we are not the same person. I am a yapper, if you can't tell. I'm a yapper to my core. And she's like, I don't like talking with people. Neither do I. But I won't sit there in silence. So I officially failed this month's reading goal because it is now the end of the month and I have not finished this. I was going to try and finish this tonight, so like when I woke up it would be like a fresh slate, but I am unfortunately joining the war on sleepiness, on the side of sleepiness. I am so tired. I read like 75 pages tonight, so I read a decent amount tonight. I am going to go to bed, and tomorrow you will hear my final thoughts on everything I have read. All right, I have finally finished Emily Wilde. It's currently April 3rd, and it was kind of the perfect day to finish this because it is storming so bad in New York City. It's just like there's so much rain and liquid and rain. I did finish Emily Wilde, and I think I'm going to be giving it a 5-star. It did have me giggling and kicking my feet for like the majority of the book. And what I liked about this book is that it's not really a romance. It's definitely a cozy fantasy, but I wouldn't call it a romantasy. I'm not really in that space, so I don't know if people have been calling it a romantasy or not, but like, I don't know, like I definitely wouldn't call it that because the romance is like, yes, it's obvious, but like the actual romance, like the acknowledging of it is very blink and you miss it, even though he literally proposes to her. Like, this book is not romance focused, and Emily is like too oblivious to like even understand that there's a bunch of romance going on, and I loved every second of it. Like, this is like my ideal amount of romance with more building up in the second book. I loved it. It was so cute. I love the dynamic. I also like that Emily isn't inherently like the most likable character. Like, she has very noticeable flaws that are on page, and that doesn't make her a bad person. It just makes her a person. And so I like that. I like that that was added like so intricately into the story, and I like that her academic pursuit is part of her flaws, is that she has allowed herself to become like less empathetic, and she notices this as the story goes on, and then notices that she's using her academia as like a self-preserve, almost as like a defense to other parts of humanity. I really loved like the exploration of that, and especially how Heather Fawcett explores it towards the end of the book when she realizes it herself. It was definitely up my alley, like cozy fantasy wise. It was super cute. I definitely will be picking up the second book. I've secured access to a copy of it, so I definitely will be picking up the second book of this. I just loved it so much. It's probably going to end up as one of my favorite books of the year. This book reminded me so much of Ancient Magus Bride. If you like Emily Wilde, you need to watch and or read this book. It reminded me so much. Not only does this series like primarily revolve around fae. It revolves around like European fae basically. So we have a lot of like the same mythology, and the main character, he doesn't get introduced I think until like chapter 5 or 6 potentially. But the main character is also protected by a black hound, and a black hound is a special type of dog in like fairy mythology that protects its owners from fae. And it, like obviously the mythology switches up anywhere you go, but like there's even a selkie in here, and there's one of the Irish like cleaning fairies in here. Like as they were talking about it, I realized like I knew a lot about what they were talking about from The Ancient Magus Bride. So if you liked this book, read or watch The Ancient Magus Bride. I am like the #1 supporter of the series. Definitely there are ships that I like that fall within the ship dynamic of Emily and Wendell. One of them being Ancient Magus Bride, the other one being Howl and Sophie from Howl's Moving Castle, another one even being like Mulder and Scully from the X-Files. These are all examples of my favorite like heterosexual ship dynamic, when the man is like an overpowered goofy doofball guy, and like the woman is like confident and competent and knows what she's doing. And then I'm not gonna lie, one of my more toxic traits is when that overpowered doofus needs to actually use his power to protect somebody, and it like reminds you of like the latent power. So I love it when we got to see, you know, glimpses of Wendell losing control and like his power, and the fact that Emily did not call out to him ever, and it was almost like a secondary thing. I'm like, I love them. But now it's time for rankings, because we're closing out this video. I'll be at a few days late, but still closing out. And I am more than happy to say that I finished everything and I did not actively dislike anything. Oh my god, you can see my messy bed. Pretend that you cannot. This TBR was actually kind of short, but it still took me a long time to read. The #1 spot, like I don't even have to speculate, without a doubt. The #1 spot is going to This Is How You Lose the Time War. Just look at all of the notes that I left in this book and like the things that it made me feel while reading it. Honestly, there's not really much to compare to. Like this book is beautiful and amazing. I loved every second of it, and it took me several weeks to read. I think like 2 or 3 weeks, because I was so engrossed in the wording, and it's incredibly dense despite it being short. And I don't mean dense in like a slogging way. I just mean that what they do is so heavy that it's not something that you just sit down and read quickly. So definitely loved this one, and I can see myself going back to it, you know, several times. Second on this list is going to be Emily Wilde. I just spent like a super long time talking about it. This is really cute, really sweet, really right up my alley when it comes to cozy fantasy. I wouldn't necessarily, like I said, call this romantasy, but definitely the amount of romance is something that I liked. And the fact that this book was subversive to a lot of like romance type books pretty much at every corner, and I really liked that as well. And then in third place, not because I didn't like it, but because it just wasn't as impactful to me as the other two, is How to Keep House While Drowning. And this one I really enjoyed because it made me confront a few things about how I keep my house and how I organize my house, and made me realize some things about my own like chores and tasks, and I really appreciated it for that. But I felt like most of it was things that I had already taught myself, already learned. There was just a few things in there that I enjoyed hearing from a different perspective, and I enjoyed hearing the author's perspective as well. So this is going to be in third place. I think it's a sign, or like a note, that I will like cozy fantasy, because I've been kind of keeping away from cozy fantasy because I'm not that big of a fantasy reader, which you are going to laugh when you click on the next video about me not being a big fantasy reader. But this was really cute, and it was actually very cozy. Like I did feel good while reading it. So I think this is my sign to go and pick up more cozy fantasies and get more into the genre. That is the end of this video. Thank you for sticking with me and for being with me in this journey. I really enjoyed these books. I would consider this definitely a win of a month. And I will see you guys next time.